Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Holistic Actress Show. Today, I have a special guest from my favorite town in the world, New York City. I had the honor to meet her in our training, somatic training recently that we have recently finished. She is an incredible human being first. Incredible coach who executive coach, I would say, who is New York based. She works with a lot of leaders, founders in the creative world, but really even beyond. I'm happy to have today with me Sarah Watson.
Hi, hello, Maritime.
I hate introductions. Like, it's something, it makes
Nailed
me
it.
so uncomfortable. Happy St. Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Well, I'm here. It's a beautiful day in New York City. We were talking about the beautiful light that you get. It just feeds your soul. So I'm so happy to see you.
Yeah, an English woman in New York City. I love that. So, I don't know if you ever heard this podcast, but I love to invite guests all over the world speaking about change and transformation, speaking about their own path, speaking about something specific. And maybe today we're going to tap into coaching, which is something that we share together. But it's so beautiful for me to hear a little bit of your story and a little bit of why an English woman is in New York, which I mean, this is not this is
Yeah.
not rare, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh, well, I'll try and make it brief, but I'll give you the story. So I grew up in the northwest of England between Manchester and Liverpool, and my parents were teachers, and I had every British Vogue going back to 1979, and I just knew I wanted to do something to do with that. I didn't know what. And in 1992, many years ago, I wrote to Paul Smith and Vivienne Westwood and asked if I could intern for them. And I got a note back from Paul Smith saying, yeah, come and work in our offices in Floral Street. So I was working in actual Paul Smith's actual office where they do all the design. There's lots of buildings around Floral Street in Covent Garden. And I realized at that moment that I was not a fashion designer, and that if I wanted to go into fashion, I just couldn't find a role for myself. And actually, create the advertising came to me as just something miraculous. I encountered some people when I was at university, and I loved the way they spoke. I love the way it was so rich and dense and funny and clever, the way they spoke, the way they brought themselves to life. And I just thought, these are my people. And so I had 25 incredible years in advertising. Half of them were in London, which I love, and then half of them are in New York City. It was my job that brought me here. So very briefly then, I got offered this job in New York to come and be the chief strategy officer of BBH, which is a beautiful agency, British agency, to come and be part of their New York office. And I was trying to get pregnant at the time. I was 36, and even though with every cell in my body, I knew I had to be in New York. It was very hard because, of course, there is no maternity leave here in the same way. I would be far from my family and my friends. And it was a sort of heartbreaking decision. But in the end, I realized that my heart couldn't take not doing this. I had to do it. And so my husband, God bless him, quit his job, and we came out here. And now we have 2 American children. In the end, I was chairman of BBH. And I left during I left during COVID 3 years ago, because I got very, very clear about my calling, which is to do these conversations, to have these very in-depth conversations. So that was 3 years ago. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, it's very fascinating, the start and in the fashion field.
Yeah.
But like now that I know you a little bit, I can see how the advertising world was certainly something in your, that you would have been perfect for. And how have been those 25 years in the advertising?
So that's a great question. How do I summarize it? It's an incredible industry to work in. The people are brilliant and clever and funny and beautiful, and you get to do amazing things. You're applying your brain constantly to, one day you're working on cars, then you're working on, sausages, and you meet very different people, different communities, you engage with different human beings, out in the field, out in the world. And you do get to be creative, because you're constantly thinking, how can we reimagine the world in a way that is going to resonate with people? And I'm wondering, I mean, this is partly, I think, why I love talking to you, Marite, and I love your story and your method acting, because if I think about my own journey and I think about fashion, I think what I loved about fashion was the idea, not even the idea, the fact that you can bring yourself to life in a really intense way. You can become something else.
Totally.
And actually, this is sort of what I did love about advertising. What do we want to create? What's going to be really spicy and real and new and interesting here? And I did actually love being in that space. But ultimately, I suppose it's the essence of that was what I was interested in. And there is lots in the advertising world that isn't that. There is, particularly now, you say what's happened in 25 years. Well, obviously, we've had a digital revolution and a lot of advertising now. When I began in 1997, you were just making like a few TV spots to go on air. And
Yeah.
now, of course, making this vast ecosystem. A lot of it is too fast for the human brain. A lot of it now is AI generated, like because we're living, the messages are very different. And I think I got very clear that the only thing that interested me about advertising was this central question of, but how do we bring this brand to life in its most intense form? What is the poetry? What is the story that is wanting to sing? And that's how I love doing that for the brands, but I love doing it for people and for the agency as well. And in the end, I just got very clear that I'd kind of run out of road with the bigger industry, and that actually it was these intense conversations. That's what I wanted to dedicate my life to. So
Wow.
that's when I encountered you.
Yeah. I love that. And you know what? I love that you were mentioning acting
Yes.
because fashion, such an important part of the process of becoming somebody else. And even as an actress, I can say that when you use costumes and any kind of prompts that you can have to enter into somebody else's body,
Yes.
it's an important instrument. It's so important. But the thing about acting, and I think it's the same thing about fashion, and it's the same thing about advertising and everything basically, is that everything has a cover, and the cover is meant to cover something, the
Mm,
essence.
mm,
So if
mm.
you want to get to the cover, you have to begin from the essence. You
Yeah.
cannot
Wow.
get there without the structure, right? So it's
Yeah.
the
Wow.
reason why in acting we don't care about dressing stuff before having deeply worked on the character, trauma, backstory, history, parents, what happened, what is their need as human beings, so what they're looking after, what's their intention, objective. And when I see bad acting, it's only when I see people dressing up, making up, but it's nothing.
It's so interesting you saying this, because I've only started coming out recently and talking about how I wanted to work in fashion, because I always held that, my parents were teachers, they were public servants their whole life. I've always held that as a very trite, superficial thing to do. But as you're speaking, there is a great quote. I think it might be Noel Coward. Someone had this quote, which is only superficial people think fashion is superficial. And I think this is true for the great designers, really. they are expressing something very deep about what it is to be human, what it is to be a woman, what it is to be alive now. And you're right, and it comes out in the clothes. And I think that's what it is about fashion that I really, really loved. And in a way, I still feel like I'm almost still working in that space. Like the fact that I never touch fabric is a very, different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The cover is as much as important as the essence, but it's just how you approach the cover. And I
Yeah.
feel the same. Like I love fashion for this reason, because there are real designers that can touch me deeply in my soul. And fashion has helped me to get out of depression in the time of my life when I was in a search of like I felt that I lost my spirit. I felt that I lost my motivation. And as I was searching inside, I needed to express that somehow. And I maybe didn't have the same instruments, possibilities that I had before when I was maybe living in New York. And New York is the town of freedom and self expression. There's no other, maybe London too. But I mean, I think those two are the main cities when you really can free yourself up.
Mm.
So it would be absolutely wrong looking at those different fields just as this is, this is superficial, this is not superficial. No, it's how we see them, it's how we approach them. And even in coaching, honestly, there is a lot of many
Yes.
shallow people who don't really get into the meaning of what it means. Uh, I look at a coaching as a way of changing, as a way of evolving and growing and becoming and transforming. And so I love this alchemy with acting, but everybody can look at that in any different way.
Yes.
So, um, yeah, this is so beautiful. I was about to ask you something, but I forgot about it. That's okay. It's gonna come back.
I know
Uh,
you're curious about New York and the becoming of New York, because it's something you were just talking about then, about how you get the freedom to be yourself. And I do think a lot about this. And there is something about New York City that has really freed me in a really, really huge way. And there's something about, it's a city where you come to become. It's a city of becoming, to a fault, and it kills people to do that, and it grinds people up and it makes them hard and all the rest of it. And if this is a time, a moment in your life when you're interested in becoming something, and I don't mean capital S something, just becoming yourself, it is, there is nothing like it. And I really feel that, like, I get off the plane in London and already there's something in me, and this is just my experience, and I'm sure everyone has their own experience, but I feel a bit smaller. I feel a bit less excited about me. And I get off the plane in New York City, and it's just the vibration of it. It just wakes me up.
yeah,
Mm.
100%. And, it's a city that takes you off, takes away a lot from you to get you where you are supposed to go or where you can go. But it's worthy the sacrifice. It's worthy the sufferance because it literally, there's no space for bullshit. That's all. There's no space. It's
Yeah.
just, it's a city that gets you naked. You
Yep.
have you have to
Yeah.
see yourself. And
Yeah.
I love that you're mentioning that when you come to your hometown, to your country, you feel smaller. And I
Mhm.
think that this is like it's the same for me in Italy. I feel so not seen, not
Mm.
worthy, not valued.
Mm.
I do believe that has a lot to do with collective trauma, with landing, the place where we become from. It's always a place where there is a lot of collective trauma in relationship to culture. And as you have been, your upbringing is in UK, in the UK, and mine is in Italy. When I hear people saying, "Oh, I would love to live in Italy," and I'm like, "What? Are you crazy?
Mm.
Why?" Because beautiful people are amazing, the food, the weather, whatever.
Yes.
And I don't feel that warmness around me. I feel this constant rejection. I feel that all the trauma comes back, really.
Mm.
So I think this is possibly also related to something that belongs to the collective, right? Or to the land. Yeah.
Mm.
Then.
Mm.
But anyway, I remember what I wanted to say. And it's something that I already shared with you about you. And I
Mm.
think that possibly it's also something that you recognize in yourself. And I know that that feeling, even when I didn't know you and I met you the first time, I just saw you on the screen during our cohort with David Bedrick, where we met. And I remember this energy coming from your figure, from your presence, very strong. And as I got to know you in class, or watching even the recordings, I felt this sensation of peace. I felt
Mm.
this sensation of like, this woman, she has a lot of vibrations. Like she really brings a lot of vibrations in the room. And those vibrations are vibrations of calm,
Yeah.
of bringing calm in the space and making people feel safe, making people feel seen, making people feel understood. And I told you about that already. It's very powerful. It's very strong. And yeah, I think that it's something that a coach needs to have.
Mm.
I struggle with that actually because I bring a lot of passion in the room, and sometimes people get to love me or hate me. But you have this equilibrium, this incredible, yeah, energetic field. So how does this presence made you becoming aware of your change?
Yeah, so thank you, Marite, for naming that, because this is something I'm only just learning about myself. Because I think with all of us, we're all on a journey. We swim in the water of ourselves, and we're not even aware of it. And I think what I'm is becoming clear to me is that this is actually how I progressed through the advertising world. That it was actually these sort of qualities of leadership um, that got me there way more. Because it's funny, I coach a lot of chief strategy officers now, people who do the job that I used to do. And when I hear what they do in their jobs, they are so brilliant. They are so brilliant. The craft is brilliant. The relationships they have, like, they way outclass me in those skills. And sometimes I think, so how the hell did I get to where I got to? And I think it's because of what you're describing. And I'm starting to understand actually that this is a very huge part of leadership, is holding a space where the nervous systems of people can be safe together to do their work. And increasingly, I find that this is the work that I'm doing, actually. I started off doing purely one-on-one coaching, but increasingly I find myself being in rooms where literally that's just what I'm doing. Holding space is such a sort of cliched word now, but I've learned what this phrase means through observing myself, actually, that I'm just creating a space where everyone can be themselves. And I really notice that how frayed that's become in a remote working world. That sometimes the people that I work with who've never been safe physically with someone else on their team or with their leader or with another, like, and there is nothing that we can do, really. There's nothing powerful and transformative that we can do that compares to physically getting people to break bread together and physically be together. And so thank you for naming that, because I'm actually starting to, in a way, to use this as part of my work in a way that I couldn't when I carried it as shame, to be honest. And again, the study that we did with David has made me understand this. I carried this in shame because, again, you'll have noticed this about me in the group. I'm not the person who puts their hand up and speaks every time at all. I'm and and sometimes I have a tendency to disappear. Like sometimes you can't even know. Sometimes I won't speak for weeks and you don't even notice me. And I held that in shame for a lot of my career, that, you know, that there was something deficient in that. And now I've really come to understand that it's actually my superpower.
Yeah.
That that just only putting myself in service of the harmony of the space is my natural way of being.
Wow.
And actually that's what that the world kind of needs, quite a lot of that.
Absolutely. And as you were speaking, and I'm thinking of all the corporate jobs I had in my life to survive when I was like at 20 and I was at a university and I started by doing a real estate broker. I was a real estate broker in my 20s. And I remember the anxiety and the shame of just going to the office. First and foremost, because I was doing something that I didn't like. So already my body was not relaxed. But
Yes.
also because this constant sense of pressure and competition and having to live in the public persona all of the time was very stressful for me
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I'm such a,
Yeah.
everybody needs to feel and being in their vulnerability, even at work. We are not robots. We're not meant to just make everything right
Yeah.
and not feeling anything. And everybody has their own trauma
Mm.
that, of course, is going to show up in business and in business dynamics. So, yeah, it makes me anxiety even to think about that. But
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
believe you.
do I
Yeah.
do believe that the nervous system regulation, it's what it's missing the most in the world, in every relationship, even in families, in business for sure.
Yeah.
So what's the vision you have, if you have a vision on your next level of coaching? What would you like to bring into that space? Because I know that you work specifically in corporate.
Well, it's very interesting, Marite, the study that we did together. So, it was so dense and so rich. But, to summarize it, my understanding is, everything is intelligent. Everything that is coming through us has some intelligence, even if it's expressed in a toxic way. So we have to meet the intelligence of it. And for me, like, it's so easy to say those words, but I think what we had to do in our class over the course of that year was to actively rewire ourselves to believe that, because we're used to condemning the toxic behavior rather than engaging with the value, the medicine beneath, the energy beneath. And so the way I'm working with this now is that it's, in a way, I almost think of the corporation as a body, and the clients that I'm dealing with are the symptoms within the body. So it is as above, so below. So you are asking whether I work somatically with my clients. I would say I actually don't work somatically with my clients so much as I work somatically with the whole picture. So, for example, if someone calls me and says, a leader calls me and says, there's somebody on my team who is absolutely business critical, very, very important to all my clients. They're holding down so much of my revenue, very, very important. And they're causing a wave of destruction. Their behavior, can you stop their behavior? So I've had this a number of times, this brief. But the way I come to this situation now, with all our beautiful training, is what is intelligent about what this human is enacting? Let's meet its intelligence. And of course, its behavior is condemned, but let's not start there, because I often find that someone in that situation will come to me and they know that they're in trouble, and they know that this isn't working, and they know that leadership is looking at them and saying this has got to stop, and that's a horrible place to be. But they can't stop doing it, because we're caught in this system, because we're caught in with this force that wants to express itself. So So that's one way that I work at. In a way, I'm unshaming bad
Yeah.
behavior in the corporate workplace, not the bad behavior, but the reasons behind it. So I meet people with a very sort of unshamed lens. So that's one thing that I'm doing. I think this is so funny. I'm finding myself doing a lot of conflict resolution. So and again, just to sort of go back to what you observed about me, I think anyone who's ever worked with me in my life would fall off their chair if they heard that I was now specializing in conflict resolution, because I think I showed up in a lot of my career as conflict averse, because as you say, I held this very calm, and part of that is that like is I can't deal with conflict, and that I take myself away from it. But I think what I've learned, and again, to unshame my own journey and the intelligence of my own actions here, I know what it is to bend yourself out of shape because you're so scared of the conflict that is around you, because you're so unable to meet it. And I think if I'd have been very comfortable with conflict all my life, I would meet this conflict with, yeah, what's the problem? Just say what you need. What's the problem? Here's a script, nonviolent communication. When you do this, I feel this, like, what's the problem? But I know that it's much, much harder than that you can bend yourself out of shape and then you get used to being in that shape. And so what I bring to these conversations, and again, this is all that what we learned with David, is the power of witness. And often what I will do in a room to create a safe space is to witness fact by fact by fact everything that has gone down in the history of these people that has never been publicly acknowledged in the group. And sometimes, sometimes I will spend 99% of my preparation for a workshop writing that script of witnessing. This is what I've heard from you. This is what you've been through. This is what I see. I believe you. This is true. And I just keep, in a way, I keep writing that script until I can feel the harmony in the room. I'm only thinking this now as I'm saying it out loud, but I just keep writing that script until I can feel all the shoulders go down and I can feel all the nervous systems and there is nothing left unsaid. And then we can get on with the work. And for me, that's such huge work, and it takes every ounce of my being to do that. But this is what we learned. I mean, this is what we
Oh
were
my
learning.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thank you for explaining so well, because
Yeah.
it's needed to understand what's behind. Like coaching means everything. It can mean
Sure. Oh,
everything.
yeah. Yeah.
And when you that's your vision, that's your approach, that's your intentions, that's how you show up. It's incredible, incredible courageous. Okay, that's incredible courageous. And I say that as a coach myself.
Yes.
And it's my curiosity, for example, based on what you said,
Mm.
asking you, because that's what I struggle, for example, a lot.
Mm.
Egos, people's ego.
Yeah.
So how do you are you scared of people's ego? Like sometimes when I think about how much resistant are people and how much people project on me as a coach so many times, it can be overwhelming sometimes. At
Mm.
the point where I have to say, maybe this is not a good fit between me and you because
Mm.
I cannot help you. The reality of things is that inside of me, I feel that that person doesn't want to be helped. Maybe because it's me, maybe with another person is going to work out better. But as a coach, we have to witness, as you
Mm.
said, such an important piece. But how to deal with people projections, how to deal with people resistance, how to deal with people's ego when that shoulders doesn't want to go down. It's gone instead of fighting back
Mm.
toward you, and you become the scapegoat of the situation. Because I'm sure that this happens, especially in the corporate world, where people sometimes don't like maybe to be leaded or guided. I don't know. I'm asking.
It's so interesting because as you're saying, this was my experience in the corporate world, but it's not my experience in the coaching world. And in a way, maybe this is partly why I've done that, because now where I've moved, why I've switched my role, because now I'm in a position to work with that ego, to actually meet again. And I would say the same thing, to meet the intelligence of that ego. What is it that needs to be seen? What is it that needs to be witnessed? What is it that is saying, but me, but what about me? What about, but yeah, okay, wow, let's meet that. But this is a lot of inner work for us to be
Oh
able
my
to, and I
gosh.
feel that this was our big programming with David, was to say, how can I really hold a belief, a steadfast belief in the intelligence of this behavior without taking the bait of it, or without pathologizing. And we live in a
Right.
world which has got a liturgy of pathologizations. How can we not fall at the first hurdle of either of those things and actually hold space? And again, I guess this is my gift as well, hold space for the intelligence that wants to come through beneath the bad behavior.
Absolutely. Wow. It's a lot of inner work for us. That's so true. Um, so I wanted to ask you something about your motherhood, because I know you
Mm.
are a mother of
Yeah.
two beautiful daughters, and I guess I'm not a mother, but I guess that your own transformation and also choosing a new path in your life, in your business, has certainly influence
Yes.
on the way you are mothering.
So I think this is foundational, but probably not in the way you might imagine. So when I
Or maybe the opposite, but maybe motherhood, it's a big foundation of your coaching. I don't know.
Yes. So, okay. So this is the story. So I had a parenting coach. I joined a mom's group that had a parenting coach when my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's just gone 10, when she was like 6 months old. And there were like 5 of us who would sit around every month with this parenting coach. And she was so brilliant. I mean, she was so brilliant. Now, fast forward 6 years, and and the parenting coach comes to see me, and she's like, I want to do something. I want to make a product. I just like, I can't, I get up at 5 every morning, and I want to do something. And she wanted to make a product. Like, she had a friend at Unilever and she wanted to make a product. But we were talking about, no, it's you. You are the product. Anyway, Ripple dissolved. This woman now has 2.5 million followers on Instagram. She's called
Oh,
Dr. Becky.
oh,
If you do not follow Good Inside, listeners, she is absolutely phenomenal. So she's a PhD child psychologist who now has like the Netflix of parenting. So you can go on there and there are videos and how to and workshops and seminars about every aspect of child development. And it's brilliant stuff. And she gets psychologists in to come and talk. And she's been on Goop podcast. She's been on We Can Do Hard Things. She's megastar. But what I observed about what Becky did was she never set out for world domination. What she set out to do was to stop, because she was working in private practice as a therapist with adults. And she just noticed that the vast majority of the issues that people come in with as adults are problems from childhood. And so her vocation was, how can I stop this from happening? How can I stop as many parents as possible, from fucking up their kids, basically? And she had this vocation like that, and that was it. How can I stop as many people as possible from fucking up their kids? But I mean, she wouldn't say it negatively. How can I give parents the tools they need to do what's right for their children? That's probably how she'd say it better. And that drove her. And so first of all, I'd already had, I'm just so proud of her. I'm like, well, Dr. People say to me, oh, yeah, you should look at Dr. Becky. I'm like, she was my coach for 7 years. Like I'm cool with it. So first of all, I have the ringside seat benefit of her parenting technique, which actually transformed me, I would say, as a human, because it made me really look at my own childhood and the way I was raised and understand what was good and what was bad and what was my parents lacking in skill, and it sort of unshamed the whole of that. So I got very clear about a lot of my own parenting. But more than that, I saw what it looks like to know your vocation and to live up to it. That's what she was doing. Her vocation is to give parents the tools to not fuck up their children. And I just saw you can change the world if you're in congruence with who you are, like her. And I just thought, all I want for myself is to get in congruence like you've done, Becky. That's it. Like, that's not going to look like for me 2.5 million followers in the Netflix of pet. It's
Why
not.
not? Why not? Maybe.
Well, like, we'll see. But
Yeah.
like, but to live, and it's so. I mean,
Yeah.
she posts on Instagram. She posts like 3 times a day, and you can tell this isn't some content calendar that she's just got so much insight. It's just pouring out of her because she's in congruence.
Oh,
And
wow.
and so actually that was really transformational in my journey. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So important to have models.
Sure.
And two things I think are very important. Be open to change. Because
Yes.
if you don't have that capacity and that will, you can get, you can read the best books, having the best mentors, you're never going to change. So
Yeah.
that's first and foremost is something to acknowledge.
Yes.
And when you are a parent, I'm not a parent, but I can see a lot of parents who are not willing to change. So that's
Yeah.
first and foremost is something so beautiful to see. Like this person wants to change for the best of their next generation, their of sons and daughters, and it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, and it really reminds me the beginning when we began this conversation, like when the cover comes, the perfect public persona for you comes to you naturally and easily. And then you can become a 2.5 million public
Yeah.
persona, or you can
Yeah.
become a bestseller when
Yeah.
your essence is shining, it's real, when there's truth
100%.
about it. So the
Yes.
process, it's always inside. The
Yes.
outside cannot change if we don't heal the inside and get into our most authentic version of ourselves.
Yeah.
So
So,
this,
so well said. It's so well said, Marite. And if I could summarize what my coaching is ultimately with most of the clients that I'm working on, it is becoming themselves, unshaming that, because we are so, I've heard this quote, might be Hegel or something, the despairing refusal to be ourselves. I think that's right. I mean, most people don't think they're allowed to be themselves. And as we know, lots of people in this society are not allowed to be themselves.
I would say most.
Yes. But there is still, and David was so great about this, there is still a negotiation that you can do. You can still get to be some of yourself or a lot more of yourself. And it's
Yeah.
it's unshaming that and getting in touch with that. And so that's a lot of the work that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a life process. I
Yeah.
think there's always something more. And that's when the fire comes. Like people like Becky, which I'm gonna follow for sure.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
um, when you start to be in this authentic version of you, you cannot stop. I can see this in myself sometimes, when I think, who the hell is making me doing all of this? Why I don't get married? Why I don't get like a normal job? Why I don't do all the things that people do outside in the world that would make me feel less stressed? I would sleep probably more and better. But my authentic self, that now it's so alive within me and wants me to go deeper and deeper and deeper, doesn't allow me to do that. It's like,
Yeah.
forget about it. That's the
Yeah.
path. You gotta work. You gotta do the work.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes I used to look at people who got into this authentic self in a very early stage of life, and I got jealous, and I would say,
Yeah.
well, I would have loved to be there like 20 years ago. But I also trusted the process. And I know that every single experience, even your 25 years in advertising, are the the the, the major step that make you the authentic person. Not because you were not authentic. I mean, you were authentic in a different way, but
Yes.
they were part of the search.
They really were. And David has this great phrase of what were you cooking during that time? And I think, yeah, there was many years in advertising when if I look back, maybe I should have left earlier, but I don't, I was really cooking something, and I was cooking the passion and the ferocity and the deep commitment that I now bring to this work. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm gonna ask you the last question because
Yeah.
I usually ask the question who you want to become, but I think
Mm.
that who Sarah wants to become, it's really what you already explained and shared with
Yeah.
us. There is another thing that I love to know about people, which is the point of crisis. That's how we call it in acting. It's the point of crisis in the life long-term process.
Yes.
There is this event that
Yeah.
when we, as actors, when we study the scenes, we need to know where is the exact event of the
Yeah.
story. And the
Oh,
character is gonna boom, it's gonna change. There is an arc.
wow.
So that's the thing, the person, the event that the
Yes.
character is not, it's not gonna turn back. And I
Yes.
usually use the example of Michael Corleone, Al Pacino in The Godfather,
Yes.
where in the movie he wants to be the good guy. He doesn't want to become like his father. But then when the father is at the hospital and because they tried to kill him, he goes to kill the people who tried to kill the Godfather. And so the minute he enters in that restaurant, you can see the character knows inside that he's going to become a murdered, a murderer. He's going to become a criminal.
Wow.
So he has to say goodbye to the good guy version of himself.
Yes.
And I think there's always this
Yeah.
time in
Yeah.
life. And I've been
Yeah.
very curious, what's your point of
So
crisis?
I was thinking I loved your prompt on this, and I was really reflecting on this. So I was telling you about how going to New York, I was trying to get pregnant, and I I had this thing. So yeah, so when I was asked to come to New York, I knew with every cell in my body instantly that I had to go. It was everything about it. But then it was really tough. Like my husband, it wasn't really what he was planning to do, and the whole thing, and babies and maternity leave and everything. And and I was seeing an acupuncturist at the time, and part of it was in 5 Elements. They do part of it is talking as well as part of anyway. And so this acupuncturist had been on this journey with me, who she knew, oh my God, I'm going to New York. Anyway, I came to the conclusion, I had a couple of key conversations with people. I came to the conclusion that it was the wrong thing to do, that I shouldn't go, that I should say no to the job. And it was the wrong thing for my husband, wrong thing for my marriage, wrong thing for my family, wrong thing for my everything. And I got this cough, this terrible cough for 10 days. I'd never had anything like this before or after. Like when you're like, hey, there's something in there.
Yeah.
You're laughing. There's something in there. I was like, and I'm getting all this cough medicine. Like, God, there's something. And every night I go to sleep, and I know it's going to be hell because I'm going to be up all night coughing, and it's hell. And so I go and see my acupuncturist, and I say, so yes, I've had this cough for 10 days. And she was like, oh, right. And you're not going to New York. I was like, no, not going to New York. No, it's the wrong time. I love how you're laughing at this, but it's so true because you know the ending, right? I was like, no, it's the wrong thing to do. And she said to me, she said something that changed my life. She said, you're not going to New York. You do know that in Chinese medicine, grief is held in the lungs.
You didn't know it until that moment.
And I think that was the moment. It was like, okay,
Wow.
okay, I don't get a choice in this. Like, I'm going. I don't get to do brain ideas about what, like, my body has decided already that this is what's happening. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing this. I think this can be helpful for many people who don't listen enough to the body. And I love
Yeah.
that your not turning back point was not a tragedy, as for many people sometimes
Oh,
is. Like something like in my case was the loss of my beloved. Like, some people really needs to get really hurt to understand the lesson, right? Or to make the change. And it's not necessarily, sometimes can be a cough. And if you
yes.
listen to that, that can
Yeah.
really change your life and change your
Yeah.
direction. And that's how
Yeah.
the power of the body, right?
Yeah.
So extremely powerful because all the answers are within
Yeah.
if we take the time to listen.
Yes.
So I'm going to do this question anyway, because I love to close with this question.
Okay.
It's right there with one.
Mm.
So who is the person that Sarah is becoming?
Oh God. I mean, I can only say myself. I'm becoming myself. I know that's going to be a lifelong work as it is for everyone. I'm sorry, that's a really boring cop-out answer, but
No, it's
that is
not. It's not.
uh,
I love that. My signature program name is Becoming Yourself. So I,
okay.
I really love it.
Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a beautiful long-term job. So thank you. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for inspiring people. Thank you for being yourself. Thank you for everything you gave me in this last year. It was a lot, even if you don't know it. And thank you for being with us. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to I'm going to remind all of the audience your information, how they can find you, your social media, your contacts, hopefully. Because I mean, who doesn't want to work with you? Me, certainly, I want to. Um, so stay with me 1 second. I'm just gonna close the episode. Thank you again. And for everyone who's listening, this is Sarah Watson and the Holistic Actress. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please reach me out for questions. So if you want to have Sarah's contacts and knowing how you can work with her. And I'll see you soon. Ciao.